Samtito Jayodhira. Nishta Presho Badreshu Nityam Bhagata Sevya Bhagati Tamashaki Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Nikamalka Puru Kalitam Sukamakara Mrita Dravi Samitam. Pivata Bhagatam Rashamariyam
Nikamalka Puru
Mahoro
Kalitam
Krishna Stadam Bhagate Damagina Karonashta Dushamasho Panona Kodunodidam. Twamapi Adabashuta Pishutam Bibo Samapi Anabiram Bidoxanam Prakyahi to Home Hardanam Sanglation Nirvana Munat Usanti Nanyatam. Anarta Pashamam Shakshad Bhakti Yoga Logasajana Chakra Satpada Samitam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jigapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostade Jayatam Surito Pango Mahamantir Matirgati Matsavasha Parambo Charadana Madana Sriman Rasa Rasadam Pi Vamsi Pada Karsan Pinhashan Rupaga Gopaneta Sri Esanam Divyat Brindarani Kapadrumada Srimad Ratnagara Shimashanishto Sri Shirada Shila Govindra Presalabi He Sevamanushmanami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Chajikaditaya Krishnaya Gopindaya Namo Namaha. Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guduradaja Mangalam Paniri Kaksho Mangalaya Tano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmahi Vishnu Padniti Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Sare Sare Hari Priya Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Dhyadite Taptikan Shanagorangi Radha Vindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Shami Namane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishes Sanyori Paskatade Sarani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. And if you were with us yesterday, which I know Rob was, you'll recall that we talked about very elevated subject matter. We talked about how you can only have Madhurya Rasa, the intimate relationship of conjugal love with Krishna. Krishna embodies sweetness to a degree that Shiva does not, that Vishnu does not, that even Rama does not. There's a certain etiquette, there's a certain formality, there's protocol involved in the worship of Vishnu, in the worship of Narayana, in the worship of Ram. And when you break through to pure unconditional love of Krishna, following the examples of the gopis, there's no protocol anymore. In fact, Krishna is no longer God. God disappears. The God who is the enforcer, the God who's the all-powerful, the God who's intimidating, who's monarchical, who's imperial, that all goes away. Simple example, if you're a parent, when you're, I could give the example about one child and sometimes he's behaving, sometimes he's misbehaving, or I could give the example about two childs, one of whom is always misbehaving, the other is always behaving. But here's the point. When you have one child who's always behaving and doing what you say and coordinating with you in harmony, you no longer have to use force to get them to do the things that are good for them. They trust you, and all you have to do is make the suggestion, and they'll be 100% all in. With such a child, or maybe you have a child who's both parts. Sometimes he's disobedient, sometimes he's obedient. When he's obedient, you're the friend. You're no longer the disciplinarian. There isn't the high and low. There is parity, there's equality. You talk as equals. You treat your child as an equal if he trusts you. You put him on his knee, you speak in a low voice, you smile a lot. But if you have another child who's disobedient, or this child when this child is sometimes disobedient, you have to adopt an entirely different mien, they used to call it in the Middle Ages, or appearance, demeanor, I guess mean comes from demeanor. Because the child's not trusting you, not following what you said, doing the opposite, and because the child doesn't even know what's good for him, is going to get himself into trouble. To get their attention, you have to raise your voice. Sometimes you have to shout. You have to threaten sometimes. It's the same child, you're the same father, but depending on the mood of the child, you're either coming down to their level and treating them as a friend, as an equal, or you're obliged by their misbehavior to take a superior punitive position in order to get them to do what's good for them. Both demeanors, both sides of you are brought forward out of love. It's not that when you're yelling at the child or raising your voice or when you're frowning, you don't love the child any less. But the child's misbehavior obliges you to express your love in a more forceful way. It allows you to remind the child that after all, you're older, you're bigger, you're more powerful, you know more, and he's sitting at your table, sheltering under your roof, eating your food. You don't have to remind the child of any of this when the child is behaving properly. So Krishna has levels of sweetness that Vishnu doesn't exhibit, that Ram doesn't exhibit, that Narayana doesn't exhibit. And therefore, Vallabhacharya wrote a song called Madhurastikam about 500 years ago in Sanskrit. It talked about how unlimitedly sweet are Krishna's features, are Krishna's pastimes. And this is about Krishna. It's not a song written that you could interchange Narayan, you could interchange Ram, you could interchange Vishnu. This is written exclusively and solely about Krishna, and it applies exclusively and solely about Krishna. Though Krishna has plenary portions, he has parts and parcels, full expansions of himself who are worshipable, who are control of all the material and spiritual worlds, who are, for all practical purposes, God, according to every definition that we have of God in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Still, they do not come up to the level of sweetness that Krishna exhibits. So let me see if I can remember this. Vallabhacharya, the English translation is, or let's do the Sanskrit first. Now, the word madhur means sweet. Madhur. So just notice how many times the word madhur comes up. And then every refrain is madhur adika adipatera madhur adika paderam badaram, which means everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. So just tune your ears for the repetition of the word madhu, which means sweet, and also for the refrain, madhuradi paterakaram madaram, which means everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness, and then I'll translate it. Adaram madaram 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 nayanam madaram hasaram madaram riyam madaram gamaram madaram madhuradi paterakaram madaram madhuradi paterakaram. Everything's completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Vacharam madaram charitam madaram vasaram madaram pamitam madaram charitam madaram brahmitam madaram Mararadi Patera Karamararam Mararadi Patera Karamaram. Benu Marado, Benu Marado, Reno Marado, Renum Mararam, Netum Mararam, Sakyam Mararam, Mararadi Patera Karamararam, Mararadi Patera Karamaram. Kitam Maranam, Pitam Mararam, Bhaktam Mararam, Subtam Mararam, Rupam Mararam, Terakam Mararam, Mararadi Patera Karamararam. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Karanam Taranam Mararam Mararam Ramitam Mararam Samitam Mararam Mararadi Patera Karam Mararam Mararadi Patera Karam Mararam Karanam Mararam Tararam Mararam 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 Ramitam Mararam Samitam Mararam Ramitam Mararam Mararadi Patera Karam Mararam Gunja Marara Mala Marara Yamana Mara Bichim Mararam Salalam Mararam Kamaram Mararam Mararadi Patera Karam Mararam Mararadi Patera Karam Mararam Gopi Marada, Lila Marada, Yoktam Mararam, Muktam Mararam, Distam Mararam, Sistam Mararam, Mararadi Patera Karam Mararam, Gopa Marada, Gopo Mararam, Yastir Maria, Sistir Mararam, Dalitam Mararam, Palitam Mararam, Mararadi Patera Karam Mararam. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Your lips are sweet, your face is sweet, your eyes are sweet, your smile is sweet, your loving heart is sweet, your walking is sweet. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Your words are sweet, your personality is sweet, your garments are sweet, your posture is sweet, your movements are sweet, your surrounding is sweet, everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Your footprints are sweet, your hands are sweet, your feet are sweet, your dancing is sweet, your friendship is sweet, everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Your singing is sweet, your drinking is sweet, your eating is sweet, your sleeping is sweet, your beautiful form is sweet, the mark on your forehead is sweet. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Your deeds are sweet, your conquests are sweet, your adventures are sweet, your stealing of hearts are sweet, the things that are offered to you are sweet, your countenance is sweet, everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Your necklace is sweet, your flower garland is sweet, your river, your moon is sweet, sweeter are rippling waves, our waters are sweet, and sweeter are lotus flowers. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. The gopis, your cowherd girlfriends, are sweet, your pastimes are sweet, your adventures are sweet, your meetups are sweet, your sidelong glances are sweet, your manners are sweet. Everything's completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. Your cowherd boyfriends are sweet, the cows are sweet, your walking stick is sweet, your unlimited creation is sweet, your heroism is sweet, your victories are sweet. Everything is completely sweet about the Lord of sweetness. I think we've made our point that while Vishnu and Shiva and others are being plenary expansions of Lord Krishna, their power can come up to 98% of Krishna's power. So wherein lies the difference? What's that 2% difference? And it is in sweetness. No other manifestation can exhibit the density and the nectarine, as tasteful, palatable, the ras of sweetness to the level that Krishna can exhibit it. And therefore, he has qualities above and beyond even those qualities of his plenary portions. Now, not only can you have the sweetest of all relationships with Krishna and only Krishna, but also Krishna is open to all. Anybody can enter into the rasa lila of Krishna by being a dasan of dasan of dasan of dasan of dasan of das, by serving the servants of 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 the cowherd damsels of Braja. Anybody can access Madhurya Lila, conjugal love for Krishna. That's not the case. Again, that which distinguishes Krishna from his other plenary portions is that each and every plenary portion had only one wife, if that. Consider the case of Rama. Sita was his wife. He was Narayan. She was Lakshmi. Sita was his wife. And when Ravana kidnapped Sita, Prabhupada mentions that being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being in most cases non-different from Krishna, Ram could have replaced Sita with millions and millions of wives. But the Ram mission is not the same as the Krishna mission. Krishna mission is to show he's God. He's the father of all living beings. He's the Lord of love. He eschews management in favor of ras, sweet relationships. And he's there to encourage, to beckon, to encourage the living beings to rejoin him in pastimes of love and devotion up to the level of Madhurya Ras. That's a difference in Krishna and Vishnu. Vishnu is said to be God at work. Krishna is God at home. Vishnu is the manager God, and Krishna is the relational God. And the best aspect of God, the best face that God shows is in relation, not in management. Just like a man is one way at the office, he's another way at the home. At the home, he's much softer, he's much sweeter, he's much more considerate. At the office, in order to make his employees perform up to their highest standard, he has to show affection for them, but he also has to instill in them some amount of fear that they'll lose their jobs if they don't perform adequately. Nobody at home is going to lose their job. Nobody at home is going to be disenfranchised. Nobody at home is going to be disowned. Nobody at home is going to be cut off. No matter what you do, your last name will still be the same. Imagine Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone's sitting down to a nice feast of tofu turkey and mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and beefless gravy. But one of the children is sitting in a corner while all the other family members are gathering eagerly with anticipation and good cheer and bone humming around the table to share a meal of Krishna Prasad. So the head of the table, the father, would look over this little boy sulking in a corner and say, "Join us, Jimmy. Join us, Jimmy." And he said, "Oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy to join the rest of the family. I've done this and that. I've made so many mistakes." That's ridiculous. Parents will say, "Come on, you're still a member of the family. Nothing will change that. No behavior, no mistakes. Nothing will change the fact that you're a member of the family. Nothing will change your last name. So stop this nonsense and get your butt over here and join us. In the same way, no one is disqualified from Krishna. Krishna is open to all. We're all his parts and parcels. He doesn't claim some of us as his parts and parcels. He doesn't claim a majority of living beings as his parts and parcels. He doesn't say 99% of the living beings are my parts and parcels. He's not exclusive. He's completely inclusive. Wherever there's life, that's part and parcel of Krishna. We talked last week about how Krishna is in the body of every living being. Those who are Vaishnavas will not harm even an ant. They see within the ant's body the shining spark which originates with Krishna. They see a part and parcel of Krishna. Vaishnav see Vidya Vina Sampade Brahmanaga Shuni Chaiva Shudra Pandita Samadarshana. With equal vision, a Vaishnav sees a learned Brahmin, a dog eater, a dog, an elephant, a cow, because the Vaishnav sees the same spirit soul within the heart of every living being, and he would no longer cause pain or suffering to another animal or reptile or fish or bird, then he would go on the altar and desecrate the deity. Because every heart is an altar, and on the altar of every heart, the Lord is installed there as the Paramatma. So you might as well go into the temple and smash the deity. I shouldn't even say such a thing, what to speak of thinking, but it would be equivalent. There would be an equivalency anytime you cause unnecessarily suffering to another living entity. It is equivalent to going into a temple or a place of worship and desecrating the altar. It's unthinkable for a Vaishnava to do such a thing. And if you follow that conclusion, then there would be no hate. There would be no friction. There wouldn't be no from the river to the sea. There would be no need for anyone to defend themselves against genocide or slaughters or massacres. There would no need for anybody to retaliate from strikes to counteract hatred and viciousness. And the whole cycle would come to a halt. It would lose the hate which drives people in this world would gradually be sapped away. Consider Ambarish and Durvasa. Ambarish had no disdain for Durvasa, even though he had quite the reputation for flying off the handle, getting angry at the slightest pretext. Here's a man whose temperament, whose emotions can be out of control. And Ambarish, on the other hand, had his emotions completely centered on Lord Krishna. He was meek and mild under any circumstances. He never took offense because he realized he was not this body. He didn't see anyone as a friend, enemy, or neutral party, and everything that happened to him, he took it as a special mercy of Krishna. Now, on the other hand, Devasi was very touchy. He arrived at the palace of Ambarish. Ambarish was gearing up to end a year-long fast, and Durvasa was hungry. So he wanted Ambarish to feed him. One thing led to another, and he ended up accusing Ambarish of not showing him suitable hospitality. Okay, well, if you're not offered suitable hospitality, you might say a word or two just to kind of jostle your host into a higher level of receptivity. But he totally overreacted for what was perceived as a major insult by Durvasa, but which in actual fact was not an insult at all. Durvasa conjured up this fiery demon and tried to kill the king. The king didn't lift a finger in defense, just stood there with Anjali Mudra, waiting for the fiery conjured demon to kill him. Krishna had to intervene and roast the snake like a snake, roast the sage, roast the demon, roast the fiery fiend, just like a snake is baked in the wake of a forest fire. And after this was all over, after Durvasa had totally overextended himself, totally lost it, and finally came back and was forgiven and saved, his life was saved by Ambarish, he expressed his amazement at the grace of the king. Durvasa had tried to kill Ambarish for no good reason, Ambarish took no offense. He didn't defend himself. He still, throughout all of this, wanted to be a friend of the irascible, angry, very dangerous sage. Dabasa concludes that although I'm the greatest of yogi and sages, today I was defeated and completed by the sweetness of a devotee. And just in the same way that Krishna exhibits a mildness, a non-reactiveness, a universal love for all living beings, regardless of their body, their gender, their nationality, their ethnicity, or even their species, devotees are made and conform. They're not only made out of the image of God, but they direct themselves, they comport themselves as if they were sons of the Father. Once Prabhupada was asked, "Do you believe in Lord Jesus Christ?" Prabhupada said, "Yes. He's Son of God. He's a great devotee." And then the next question, "Do you believe he's the only Son of God?" Prabhupada says, "How could that be? God is the source, the seed from which all living beings. He's not only a seed from which all living beings come, but he's the seed of the highest, sweetest reciprocal relationship of Madhurya Lasa, and he invites everyone, irregardless of caste, creed, gender, to come with him." So who can be more democratic? Who can be more universally accepting than Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Now, every living being is his son, but only Jesus at that time, place, and circumstance acted like the Son of God. He acted like the Son of God. Now, we're all parts and parcels of the Lord. We're all created in the image of God. But how many of us act like a God the Father? That qualification is that qualification is fulfilled by those who are pure devotees of Krishna. Yad pada pangaja palashvara karmasan gadada tadavam yasharamati shrodiganam stam aranam bhaja vasudeva. By serving the Lord within the heart with faithfulness and devotion and consistency, the Lord from within the heart causes all darkness to disappear. He dissipates all bad habits. He eliminates envy, greed, mistrust, suspicion, hatred. He takes away that vision which sets us apart from each other and blesses his pure devotees with a universally loving vision. And Krishna is like that. His devotees are like that. And so Krishna considers devotees non-different from him. However, devotees who want to engage in conjugal rasa, who want to serve the gopis as the gopis are serving the Lord in Vrindavan, making various tasteful arrangements for the conjugal meetings of Radha and Krishna. Divyad Vrindananyakapa Dumarad Srimad Radha Shishi Radha Shilago Prasadavi Sevamana. Radha and Krishna are described as living in this enchanting rural area known as Vrindavan, which is transcendental, Divyad Vrindanak, and they're seated on a swing, a royal throne, which is attached by swings and to a branch. They're being swung back and forth gently in the breeze. The gopis are swinging them. The gopis are offering chamran, peacock, incense, aguru, various scents. They're singing beautiful songs. They're dancing. Nikunjayuno ratikeli shida yayali biju tira pekshamiyam. Various tasteful arrangements are being organized by Tulsi, by Brinda Devi. She's the social director. She's the activities director. And every night she has a different program for the satisfaction of Radha and Krishna. So if you want to be part of that, if you want to enter into as a servant of a servant of a servant of the gopis who are engaged daily in making different tasteful arrangements for the meetings of Radha and Krishna, then you have to take birth in Krishna Lila. You have to take birth in Krishna Lila, not in Ram Lila, not in Vishnu Lila, not in Narayana Lila, not in Shiva Lila. In Danyakaranya, the sages who had deep, loving affection for Lord Ram, they inhabited the forests round about where Ram had his forest ashram, and they were totally devoted to Ram. So much so, they wanted to take their devotion to the next level. Rather than being sages and saints or glorifying Ram, worshiping Ram, they were ready to go to the next level of intimacy, to see Ram as their husband, or even better, as their paramour, their lover. And so Ram blessed them that in their next life they would take birth as gopis in Vrindavan to participate in Krishna Lila. Krishna Lila. It's also described that the various Vedas, the various Shrutis, the various songs and poems and verses, which are in direct agreement with the conclusions of the Vedas, vast body of literatures, are all themselves personified. And those Vedic verses, those Vedic poems, those Vedic songs glorify the Lord. They sing songs and poets and ballads all about the glories, pastimes, name, fame, and activities and pastimes of the Lord. But those literatures also are a bit constrained by formality, by rhyme, verse, rhythm, the rules of grammar, the rules of rhyme, by alliteration, by onomatopoetic. There are certain protocols, there are certain rules that you have to follow in the course of composing and delivering devotional hymns. There's a certain reverence that you have to have. But we quoted yesterday from Chaitanya Charamrita, Aishwari Ganate Sabhajiga Aishwari Stili Namam Rita Param. Krishna says hymns, songs, poems are offered to me in a mood of reverence and awe and worship are weak. They're weaker than the chastising words of the gopis, than the harsh, critical words of Radharani. Because of her level of surrender to Krishna, the harsh, criticizing, henpecking words of Radharani are sweeter to Krishna than the reverential hymns of the Vedas. And so he says, love weakened by awe, love weakened by majesty doesn't please me as much as that love which is emboldened by intimacy and surrender. So the Vedic literatures are themselves, in their role as Shrutis, are obliged to follow certain formalities and certain protocols. They hanker to come to a higher level of intimacy with the Lord. And so therefore they also are blessed in order to take birth in Krishna Lila. Lakshmi herself, who's the husband of Narayana, who's the husband of Vishnu, she also wanted to enter into the rasa dance as one of the gopis, and yet she was told that as Lakshmi, you cannot do that. First, you have to transform yourself into a gopi, and that means one whose love for the Lord is unconditional. That love is not aware of the beautiful opulence of, say, Dwarka Fort and the marble walls and the jewels embedded in the walls and the silken sheets and the servant and all like that. The love of the gopis for Krishna disdains the slightest manifestation of opulence. They don't want that. So one might think, well, how could I possibly enter into that exalted company? Well, the answer is on your own devices, through your own talents, through your own Shakti, you can. Only by the mercy of Krishna. Tapi te deva padambuja prasada nishana janatin tadbang. No one can obviously enter that exalted state of serving the gopis who are serving the gopis who are serving the gopis to arrange beautiful nightly pastimes with Radha and Krishna. That's far beyond our capabilities. That's far beyond our level of purity. We can't achieve that by any of our efforts. But if Krishna gets a recommendation from Radharani or any of the gopis, we can immediately be elevated to service directly at the lotus feet of the Lord through the chain of loving devotional servants of Vrindavan. If all living beings were prepared to give up their material desires and their separate and engage today, this moment, in the service of the Lord, every single one would be accepted. Every single one would be. Ram had one wife, Vishnu had one wife, Shiva has one wife. This is a hard and fast rule. Krishna had 16,108 wives. It's 16,108 wives. You know the story from the Krishna book. I think it was Narakasura, wasn't it Narakasura? Or Bhaumasura had kidnapped 16,000 wives and held them captive. And because they had been not willingly, but forcibly, but nevertheless, they lived in the house of another man. No other self-respecting young man would marry them because their chastity would be in question. Stockholm syndrome, people get attached to their captors, their kidnappers. So they had no one to marry in society. They were the most beautiful, they were most qualified, they were great devotees. And that was okay with them because they didn't want to marry a mundaner. They wanted Krishna. And in fact, because of their desire to marry Krishna, that's why the kidnapping took place, so that they would have no other shelter, that no one else would aspire to take them in holy matrimony, that they would be forced to throw themselves on Krishna's mercy, which was exactly according to their desires of their previous lives. And Prabhupada said, why 16,000? 16 million, 16 billion. Everybody can join in conjugal vows with Krishna. Even in Christianity, most of the nuns, those who have given up family life, who have taken a vow of celibacy, promised never to get married, they think of themselves as brides of the Lord. They think of themselves as the Lord's wives or the Lord's girlfriends. There's no limit. It's not even limited in the Vedic culture. The same concept is there in Christianity. I imagine in other religions too, to be the bride of the Lord, the wife of the Lord. We talked about Mirabai. Spontaneously, even from an early age, she saw herself not as a byproduct of a certain caste or a certain province or a certain state or a certain gender, but she saw herself from early childhood, some or other, as an eternal spirit soul, part and parcel of the Lord. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhika. She saw her eternal constitutional position as being a dust of atom at the lotus feet of the Lord, and her purpose in life to serve the Lord. So she resisted all efforts to push her into family, friend, country boxes. Yeah. When Krishna was on the planet, he had, from each one of those 16,108 wives, he had 10 sons. And each one of those 10 sons had 10 sons who were all the grandchildren of Krishna. So even when Krishna was on this earth planet 5,000 years ago, he had a direct familial connection. I mean, we're all the children of God. We're all parts and parcels of God. But just the dynasty that Krishna appeared in, the Yadu dynasty, by the time Krishna had been on the planet for 125 years, fathered, married wives, and had sons, and then had grandsons. His Yadu dynasty, by that time he left the planet, numbered 1 billion members. 1 billion members for Krishna's dynasty alone. How many people live on the surface of the planet today? Is it 2 billion? 3 billion? Well, if Krishna's dynasty was present, 1 in 3 would be a Yadu. 3 would be a family member of Krishna. He's capable of supporting all living beings, regardless of the state of their devotion, regardless of how tight they are or not so tight to the Lord. He doesn't begrudge any living being in any of the 8,400,000 species of life, their food, their shelter, their sexual partner. He doesn't begrudge them procreating. He offers this to all living beings. And if any of those living beings would like to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master coming in a chain of succession from the gopis, cowherd maidens, and cowherd boys of Vrindavan, then Krishna has open arms. Anyone who comes to me will never be denied. Bhakti Yoga will set you free. Success is guaranteed. Just think of me, become my devotee, and you will live with me eternally. Well, I've made too many mistakes. I don't have the qualifications. I'm too old. I'm too young. Krishna says, even if you mess up a time or two, I won't make any complaint. Just rise up again. You can still shine like a saint. He says, I don't play any favorites. No one is denied. If someone longs for me in bhakti, I'm naturally inspired. As they surrender to Krishna, Krishna rewards them accordingly. But Krishna is there. He's poised. He's ready. He's in your heart. He's never abandoned you. You're always a member of his family. You cannot not become a Krishna servant. You can deny it. You can ignore it. You can forget about it. You can walk away from it. But your name is still the same. You can't change the family that you come from, and you can't change the fact that your Father wants to do good to you. So you might as well stop resisting the Lord. You might as well stop forcing the Lord to take a punitive, superior role. You might as well surrender, because that's what's good for you. When there's an overwhelmingly powerful foe, fighting is not an option. Surrender is the only option. No matter what that foe might do to you, you still have no choice but to surrender in the face of overwhelming wealth. So in the face of Krishna's overwhelming omnipotency, from him come millions of Brahmas, millions of Shivas, millions of Vishnu, millions of universes, millions of sun, millions of moon, millions of... You're going to fight him? You're going to oppose him? Hello. You have no option. Even if Krishna were to treat you roughly, even if Krishna were to mishandle you and misuse you, still, if you have half a brain, you don't have any other option than to surrender to the all-powerful Lord. It doesn't, you can't make a condition. Well, Krishna, if you'll treat me nice, then I'll surrender to you. You're already surrendered, whether you know it or not. The food you eat, the sun, the materials for your roof, the fact that your heart beats another beat, that you woke up this morning. These are all indication of your complete dependence on Krishna. So why don't you get smart, wake up, come out of the fog, and admit it? When I went to prep school, this is way back, 60 to 64, Lawrenceville, New Jersey, one of the most eccentric math teachers we had was a man named Mr. Frederici, and he was very elderly. He probably should have retired 15 years ago, but he obviously loved teaching. He obviously loved teaching, but he was in his 80s, and he would teach math, and he would have his back turned while he was writing things on the board, and taking advantage of his age. And he himself was in the fog of being in the 80s. Kids would throw spitballs and make faces, and they would act up while his back was turned. But he wasn't as oblivious as they thought, because every once in a while, to show that he knew exactly what was going wrong, he would turn around and he would whiz, he would zing the eraser or a piece of chalk, and he would bounce it right up. This is a guy, 85 years old. He would turn around like in the blink of an eye and sling that eraser, sling a piece of chalk that would bounce off the head of the maldoer. His accuracy was unerring, and he would say, "Burnaby, get out of the fog. Warden, get out of the fog." So our message to you today is, get out of the fog. You have to surrender to an overwhelmingly powerful foe. You don't. It's simply foolishness, phantasmagoria. It's a fairy tale to think that you can live independent of God. Might as well recognize what's obvious, face the facts, be objective, and surrender. And in that, you cannot put any conditions. God is going to do with you what he wants to do. The good news is he loves you even more than yourself. He knows more than you do. He has more power than you do. So you're never the loser by surrendering to God, but you're always the gainer by millions and millions and millions and millions of times over. So better do, as Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'm not sure about Facebook here. There's no indication of anybody having come on board throughout the whole talk, although we did have a couple of thumbs up and a couple of hearts. So that's highly unusual, because we usually have a bunch of people on Facebook. I don't know if people have just lost interest, which is fine with me, because I'll preach to the wall, or if there's something about Facebook Live which is malfunctioning. Seems not to be. I can see myself on the screen here on Facebook Live, but who knows? Who knows? Rob, you and me, man. Do you want to share anything that I will then post and share? Assuming that I'm able to post this. It's very suspicious that no one joined the comments at all during that whole time.
Yeah, that is unusual. I imagine it's some sort of a glitch going on with Facebook.
Yeah, it might be. We'll check that out in a minute or so. But please share with us what you have.
All right. I only got a few, but hopefully they're good enough to make up for the lack of quantity. All right. From peacock feather to lotus feet, everything about Krishna is sweet.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Made in his image, sons of the Father, devotees see all beings as sister and brother.
What was that again? Someone just walked in right now. I don't
Made
know.
in his image.
Please, there's nothing I can do right now. It's the last 2 minutes of the show. It's working. Is that what you're saying?
A lot of comments.
Oh, okay. Vi came in with her phone. There's a whole bunch of comments. I'm not seeing any of them in my sidebar, but that's good. It's working. It's working.
You can keep them and read them.
All right. She says there's comments worth. Please go ahead. I'm sorry for the interruption. Go ahead and finish your offerings here, Rob.
No problem, Prabhuji. Made in his image, sons of the Father, devotees see all beings as sister and brother.
Can you repeat that once more for my benefit?
Yes. Made in his image, sons of the Father, devotees see all beings as sister and brother.
Great, great. Yeah, I mean, is
And
more?
one more.
Okay.
Krishna does not deny the opportunity for any being to become a gopi.
Yeah, or maybe serve the gopis. Yeah, become a servant of the gopis. Those are nice. In just a few words, you've recapped everything. Well, we just have a few comments here. Happy Nityananda Appearance Day from Namamrita. We'll be reading more about Nityananda tonight at the evening program and thinking about him during the day. Rajesh Day, Hari Krishna, Govinda Dev, Lakshmi Nashringa, Anjali, thanks for joining us. Bye, Bobby, of course. Chaitanya Ludavanshi plays like a singer. Get out of the fog. I think my always telling me to get out of the fog. Patricia, thanks for joining us. We derive daily pleasure from the bird that you donated, Oscar, quite a character. Lakshmi Nrsimha says, I heard the whole lecture. All right, thank you. Throughout today, and in addition to chanting the names of the Lord, don't forget who has delivered the process for liberation. That is Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. We celebrate the appearance day of Lord Nityananda, who is the original spiritual master and without whose mercy none of us would have access to Krishna bhakti and ultimately to joining the servants of the Lord in the spiritual world. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.